The silverware in Trattoria Belladonna chimed like tiny bells when Eva Rico let go of her father's hand. She didn't run far, just 3 quick steps across tile warmed by the kitchen's ovens, straight to the waitress with the kind eyes. She wrapped both arms around the woman's legs and pressed her cheek to black apron cloth that smelled faintly of flour and orange zest. "I want her to be my new mommy," Eva said, sound thinned. The Friday rush folded onto itself. Forks hovered midair. Waiters froze. A violin on the speaker crackled to a hush. Near the door, 2 men in charcoal suits felt their jacket hems, ready to reveal metal if the boss moved wrong. Matteo Rico, in an open black suit and a grief dark tie, did not move at all. He tilted his head as if the ceiling had spoken. The city that always obeyed his commands, the docks, the clubs, the warehouse teeth, had never given him this. His daughter's voice, clear and small, carrying a wish he did not know how to answer. The waitress didn't startle. She bent easily, meeting the child at eye level. Her name tag read Liz in all caps, a neat, unafraid handwriting. Up close, she had the kind of beauty that didn't insist on itself. Light brown hair tugged into a no-nonsense knot, green eyes that gathered details gently, a mouth that chose kindness even when silence might be safer. "And what's your name?" she asked softly, like a secret. Eva's fingers curled tighter. "Eva," she whispered. Then, in careful syllables, "Per favor, gelato." 1,000 things could have happened. The wrong smile, the wrong pity, the wrong fear when the room realized whose child had just claimed a stranger. Instead, Liz answered in warm, clean Italian, the kind that smells like basil and Sunday and a home you miss before you leave it. "Gelato is for brave girls after dinner." "Are you brave?" Eva nodded, solemn as an oath. Something in Matteo's chest gave. He felt it like a stitch ripped from too tight fabric, air pushing where it hadn't been allowed. "Signore?" A maitre d' with trembling hands gestured them to a corner banquette. Good sight lines, twin exits, nothing to the back but a brick wall. The Rico bodyguards, stone-jawed, recalculated the room, the angles, the laugh that had become a threat because it had come from a child who rarely laughed. Matteo's voice, when it came, was coal and velvet. "We'll stay." Liz took 2 menus, then hesitated. Her eyes flicked to the guards, then to Matteo's cuff, hand-stitched, expensive, the kind of detail a man wore when he didn't apologize for being in charge. The room's tension pulsed like a second heartbeat. Still, she smiled, as if the only thing that mattered was whether a little girl would feel safe tonight. "Welcome," she said, placing water like a ceremony. "We have a special on orecchietta with sausage and broccoli rabe, and chef made fresh orange ricotta cake. But I can also make a very serious bowl of plain spaghetti for very serious princesses." "Serious," Eva said, matching the cadence. Her mouth almost remembered how to smile. Almost. Matteo said, "Osso buco," without looking at the menu. When his gaze found Liz again, it carried a history no menu could translate. And for her, bring what you would feed a daughter. Their eyes held a fraction too long. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away to see who else was watching. "Right away," Liz said. He told himself he watched because it was his nature. The boss watched. He learned the rhythm of rooms. He measured loyalty by how a man set down his glass and by how a woman lied about not being afraid. But it wasn't that. Not only that. Liz moved like an apology to a hard world. When a couple argued too loudly by the bar, she refilled their water and set down a dish of olives like a peace offering. When a busboy's tray wobbled, she steadied it with her left hand and caught a sliding fork with her right, laughing softly, as if saving small things from falling was a good spell anyone could learn. Eva tracked Liz with her eyes the way children follow a kite they're sure will leave the sky if they blink. Every time Liz drifted near, Eva's shoulders lifted, then settled. By the time spaghetti arrived, steam curling, sauce simple and honest, Eva had inched to the edge of her seat. "Do you know any Italian words?" Liz asked her, conspiratorial. "Stella," Eva said, like the song. Liz's heart showed itself there, an open thing that didn't panic at tender sentences. Then you must be a star, she whispered. And when you make a wish, the sky listens. Mateo's fork paused halfway to his mouth. It was ridiculous how easily that line slid under his armor. Wishes were for men who could afford to lose. He could not. Yet his fingers shifted closer to the table's edge, nearer to Eva's small hand. He hadn't wanted dessert in a year. Now the whole night tasted like sugar he'd sworn off. Across the street, a shutter snicked. A camera, quick, practiced. Dario, the younger of his shadows, caught the flash in the window's reflection and touched his earpiece. Mateo did not look. He chewed osso buco like a man who could devote his attention to lamb marrow while memorizing the gait of a man in a gray hoodie who had just turned up mulberry without hurry. "Do you sing the Star Song?" Liz asked. Eva glanced at her father. "Go on," Mateo said, softer than he recognized. Liz hummed first, quietly, inviting rather than performing. Eva's lips shaped the melody, hesitant, then braver, voice thin but true, weaving through the restaurant's hum like a silver thread. A table of old men near the kitchen fell quiet mid-card game. Someone in the back blessed themselves without thinking. When the last note trembled into silence, Eva looked up, almost shy. "Gelato now?" Liz bowed. As promised. She brought a small bowl with a candle. "For bravery," she said. "You may make a wish if your father agrees." Mateo's throat had complicated itself into a knot he would not explain to any man. "Make it," he said. Eva closed her eyes. Her lashes, dark and fragile, kissed her cheeks. Mateo used to watch his late wife blow out birthday candles with that same half-smile. He looked at the candle as if it had the nerve to stand in his house and remind him what his hands hadn't been able to protect. Eva blew. Smoke curled up like the city exhaling. "What did you wish?" Liz asked, breaking the tension the way good people do, with gentle hands and a door propped open to air. Eva leaned in until her hair brushed the table. "For angels to find us," she confided. Then, louder, like a declaration, "and for you to come again." Liz's laugh was small and stunned. She folded her order pad into her apron, buying herself a second to feel it without falling in. "I work most nights," she said carefully. "But I don't—" "She means," Mateo said. "Will you visit?" Liz looked at him. It took courage to do that in his city, in his corner, under the gaze of men who carried violence as naturally as they carried their wallets. "I don't do visits," she said. "I don't blur lines with customers, especially not at night." He almost respected that more than the gelato and the song and the candle. "Daytime," he said. "My aunt will be there. The child has lost enough." Liz's eyes softened, then sharpened. "I'm here for her," she said, and he heard the boundary click into place. "If I come, it's for her." "Of course," Mateo said, and he meant it. The lie was that he didn't also want something for himself. Not a body. He could buy those. But the calm at Liz's shoulders, the way rooms exhaled when she set down a plate like a promise. The check came. He put down cash. Too much on purpose to watch what she did. She counted, plucked 2 bills, and tucked them under the leather folder, leaving the rest. "You overpaid," she said. His mouth tilted. "Consider it hazard pay." "For what hazard?" she asked, genuinely curious. "For making my daughter laugh," he said, because the truth felt like blasphemy said aloud. Her smile didn't widen with the money. It warmed at the honesty. "Then let me owe you change," she said. "Next time, I'll bring her a book." He rose. Eva's tiny hand found his without asking. He felt the grain of her palm, the life in it. How had he lived with both fists closed for so long? As they crossed the threshold, the bell above the door chimed. Outside, a motorcycle idled too long. The cameraman across the street fidgeted with his lens. Somewhere in the city a siren unfurled, a ribbon of blue and urgency. Mateo did not look back. Liz did. She watched father and daughter vanish into a night that looked at them like a promise and a threat. She pressed a hand to her apron pocket where an old subway card lived next to a folded page from a child's psychology textbook about selective mutism. A girl who hadn't spoken much had sung tonight. In the window's reflection, a shape moved. A gray hoodie. A hand lifted a phone. A snap. Liz's skin prickled. "Everything okay?" the chef called from the pass. "Fine," Liz lied, because good women sometimes do. She bussed the banquette slowly, found a paper napkin crumpled into a star shape, placed there by small hands. She smoothed it as if smoothing a child's hair. Then she glanced once more at the glass, at the street, at the space where a man like a storm had stood still so his child could catch her breath. Who was watching whom tonight? She would tell herself it didn't matter. She would tell herself boundaries were fences that kept gardens safe. But gardens, she knew, need rain, and rain doesn't ask the fence for permission. The first raindrops began just as Liz Thompson pulled the alley door shut behind her. The garbage bins clattered softly, the air thick with garlic and engine oil, and somewhere above, neon from Trattoria Belladonna pulsed in pink against the wet brick. She told herself she wasn't looking over her shoulder, but she was. That faint sound again, rubber scraping pavement. Footsteps, light but deliberate. Her pulse quickened. The shadow she'd seen in the window reflection earlier hadn't been a trick of the light. "Matteo Rico," she whispered under her breath, testing the name that staff whispered about when the kitchen was closed. They called him the Quiet King. Some said he owned half the city. Others said he owned the silence people feared most. And tonight, his daughter had chosen her. Matteo didn't sleep. His penthouse windows overlooked a city that never did either, lights blinking like pulse monitors across Manhattan's glass arteries. He poured a finger of whiskey, but it did nothing for the ache behind his ribs. Down the hall, Eva slept clutching the paper napkin star Liz had folded for her. The girl hadn't let go of it all night. He told himself that was good. Progress. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw the camera flash reflected in the restaurant window. Someone had been watching him with his guard down, with her near him. Weakness looked like warmth to men like Rafe Calder, and warmth got you killed. The next morning, Liz arrived at the restaurant early, hoping that a little light and noise would burn away whatever weird energy had followed her home. But the city was slower today. Gray. Waiting. "Someone called for you," said Marco, the restaurant's manager, handing her a folded note. "Guy didn't give a name. Said you made a good impression last night." Liz frowned. The handwriting was too neat to be random. "This is Matteo Rico. My daughter hasn't stopped talking about you. Come for dinner at our apartment tomorrow, 2 p.m. My aunt will be there. It's for the child's sake. Monsieur Rico." Her heart stuttered. She should throw it away. She should call the cops, or maybe the restaurant owner. But something inside her whispered differently. She remembered the little girl's small voice saying, "The angel sent you." Liz folded the note and tucked it into her pocket. At 2 p.m. the next day, she stood in front of a black steel gate that looked like it could stop a tank. A guard scanned her ID, then buzzed her through. The Rico penthouse sat high above the East River, sunlight bending through glass walls that made her feel like she was stepping inside a painting. Matteo was waiting at the top of the stairs. Black shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearm, the ink on his wrist visible. A lion surrounded by Latin script, power in human form. But his eyes softened the moment he saw Eva peeking from behind his leg. "Liz," he said, voice low and resonant. "Thank you for coming." "I'm here for her," Liz said quickly. "Not for whatever this is." His mouth curved, a small, knowing smile. "Good. She needs someone who isn't afraid to talk back." Eva tugged Liz's hand through the living room. There were toys half tidied, half forgotten. Signs of a life trying to be normal. The little girl chattered in half English, half Italian now, showing her drawings of angels and butterflies. "She's talking more," Liz said softly. Matteo nodded. "Since that night, you woke something in her." "I didn't do anything special," Liz replied. "You listened," he said. "That's rarer than you think." She glanced at him. "Do you always study people like you're about to make a deal?" He didn't blink. "Everything in my world is a deal, Signorina. some written, some not. "And this?" she asked. "Which one am I?" He stepped closer, his voice quieter now. A deal of the heart, but not on paper. Liz's pulse jumped. His nearness was a current, controlled, dangerous, magnetic. She stepped back just enough to breathe. Eva's laugh broke the tension. "Mia, Liz? Cookies?" Liz knelt, grateful for the distraction. "Only if your daddy helps." "Daddy doesn't bake," Mateo said dryly. "He does today," Liz teased. Zia Nina Rico arrived soon after, a small, sharp-eyed woman wrapped in a silk scarf. She watched Liz like she was reading a confession in invisible ink. "You have gentle hands," Nina said finally. "That's good. My brother had a wife with gentle hands, too." It kept Mateo human. Liz smiled, unsure if that was a blessing or a warning. By late afternoon, the kitchen smelled like sugar and forgiveness. Mateo leaned against the counter, sleeves dusted with flour, pretending he wasn't enjoying himself. Liz caught him watching her once, twice, too many times. When Eva insisted on singing while they baked, Liz hesitated only for a moment, then started humming Stella Stellina. Mateo froze mid-motion, the wooden spoon halfway to the bowl. That song again, Isabella's lullaby. Liz saw the pain flicker across his face and stopped. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," he said, voice rough. "Keep going." And she did. When Eva's voice joined hers, soft and pure, Mateo turned away and wiped his hands on a towel that didn't need wiping. His chest hurt in a way no bullet had ever managed. That evening, when Liz was leaving, Mateo walked her to the elevator. "You handled Zia Nina," he said. "That's a miracle. She's protective." Liz smiled. "Like you." His gaze lingered. "You shouldn't come here again." Liz blinked. "Excuse me?" "You live in a clean world," he said. "I live in one that stains everything it touches. People who stand too close to me get hurt." She studied him for a long moment. "You're afraid?" His jaw tightened. "I'm cautious. There's a difference." The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside but turned before they closed. "You can't protect her from every shadow, Mateo. Some healing happens in the light." And then she was gone. That night, Mateo's phone buzzed. Rafe called her. A name that made the air heavier. "Rico," Rafe said with mock cheer. "Saw the photos. Sweet kid. Cute waitress." Mateo's blood went cold. "What photos?" "You should check tomorrow's New York Chronicle. They call it the Widowmaker's Soft Side. Touching piece. Maybe you're going public. Or maybe someone wants to remind you what happens when the king gets sentimental." Mateo's glass shattered in his hand. The headline the next morning made him see red. Mafia boss's little princess finds hope in diner waitress. A grainy photo showed Liz kneeling by Eva, the girl smiling, candle between them. A second photo, Mateo watching from the shadows, expression unreadable. He dialed Dario. Find the photographer, then find who paid him. "Already on it, boss," Dario said. "We traced it back to Calder's men." "Handle it quietly," Mateo ordered. But even as he said it, he knew quietly wasn't how this would end. Liz arrived at the restaurant to find 2 black cars idling across the street. She didn't notice the man in the gray hoodie watching from a diner booth nearby, snapping another photo. When she stepped inside, Marco handed her the newspaper. "You're famous." Her stomach dropped. "Oh my God." She read the caption aloud under her breath. "Single waitress brings warmth to mobster's family. Mateo Rico, Mafia boss, father, widower, monster." Her hands trembled. That night her phone rang, a deep voice, calm and unmistakable. "Liz, don't panic, you're safe. But from now on, you don't walk home alone." "Mateo? I'm sending a car. You're under my protection." "Protection?" she repeated, incredulous. "From who?" "From me," he said quietly. "From what being near me will cost you." The line went dead. She didn't see him again for 3 days, not until a black SUV pulled up outside the restaurant just after closing. "Get in," Mateo said through the open window. Liz crossed her arms. "You can't keep appearing like this. People will talk." "They already are," he replied. "And I don't care. My enemies do." "Then let me go," she said. He leaned out, eyes dark with something between fury and fear. "You think I could after my daughter asked for you in her sleep?" Her heart faltered. "What?" "She said your name last night," Matteo murmured. First time she's spoken in her dreams since her mother died. For a long moment, neither moved. The city pulsed around them, loud and alive. Finally, Liz opened the door and slid in. "Just to make sure she's okay," she said softly. Matteo nodded, but his expression told a different story. When they reached the penthouse, Eva ran straight into Liz's arms, sleepy and smiling. Matteo stood in the doorway, watching, silent. After Eva was tucked in, Liz turned to leave, but Matteo caught her wrist. Not rough, not gentle, just real. "You changed everything," he said. "Maybe that's not a bad thing. It is when change gets people killed." "Then teach me your world," she challenged, "so I know what I'm risking." He stepped closer, his breath warm against her ear. "You don't belong in it, Liz." "Then maybe your world should change," she whispered. For the first time in years, Matteo Rico laughed, quiet, disbelieving. It wasn't a sound of amusement. It was the sound of a man realizing he'd already lost the battle he hadn't meant to start. Outside, unseen, the gray-hooded man sent another photo to his employer. Subject confirmed. Waitress seen entering Rico residence again. Seconds later, a reply pinged back. "Good. Tell Rafe Calder she's his leverage now." New York looked peaceful from above, but Matteo Rico knew better. Peace was just camouflage for the next storm. 3 days had passed since the attack in Liz's apartment. Since then, she and Eva had lived inside Matteo's penthouse, a glass fortress with hidden cameras and guards that changed shifts like clockwork. It was supposed to be protection, but sometimes safety felt more like a cage. Every morning, Matteo would sit across from Liz at the long marble table while Eva colored between them. He'd pretend to read the newspaper, but his eyes kept finding her. The way she tied her hair, the way she laughed softly at Eva's questions, the way her presence seemed to shrink the ghosts in the room. Liz noticed. "You stare like you're searching for something that isn't there," she said once. He didn't deny it. "Maybe I am." She smiled faintly. "Or maybe you're afraid it's already here." Matteo didn't answer. The truth was worse than either, because what he was afraid of wasn't the danger outside, but how alive he felt when she was near. Zia Nina arrived that afternoon, carrying both biscotti and opinions. "You're rebuilding the house," she told Matteo. "You just don't realize it yet." Then she turned to Liz. "You have the hands of someone who heals people without medicine. Keep using them." Liz blushed. "I just talked to her, that's all." "Talking is medicine," Nina said simply. Eva ran in holding a drawing, 3 figures under a big yellow sun. "That's Mommy in heaven," she explained, pointing to the angel. "That's Daddy, and that's Liz." Liz froze. Matteo's throat tightened. He couldn't remember the last time Eva had drawn him smiling. Later that night, Detective Mara Cole arrived unannounced, trench coat, tired eyes, and a tone that didn't bother with small talk. "We intercepted chatter," she said, dropping a file on Matteo's desk. "Rafe Calder's losing patience. The photos worked. He thinks you're soft now. He's planning something big." "What kind of something?" Matteo asked. "Leverage," Mara said. "And he knows where to find it." Her gaze flicked toward Liz. "You need to get her and the kid out of the city." Liz crossed her arms. "I'm standing right here." Mara looked impressed. "So you've got a backbone. Good. You'll need it." She handed Liz a small black device. "One press. I'll be here in 5 minutes. Use it if you smell trouble." Matteo frowned. "She won't need it." "She will," Mara replied. "You just don't know when." Then she was gone, leaving silence that tasted like gunpowder. That night, Eva begged Liz for a bedtime story. Matteo listened from the doorway as Liz improvised one about a lonely lion who found a girl brave enough to look him in the eye. When Eva finally fell asleep, Matteo said quietly, "You shouldn't tell her stories about lions." Liz smiled. "Then maybe lions should stop pretending they're monsters." He looked away. "Monsters don't get to choose who they hurt, and fathers don't get to stop loving." she whispered back. Something in his chest cracked open at that. A small, dangerous fracture. The next morning, Liz found a folded note on the kitchen counter. Don't go anywhere today. Someone's watching the building. She didn't need to ask who it came from. The handwriting was Mateo's, sharp, exact, a man used to leaving orders, not reasons. She tried to act normal, helping Eva with her breakfast, but her hands shook when she poured the milk. Daddy says you're nervous, Eva said, matter of fact. Liz smiled weakly. Daddy sees too much. Only when it's about people he cares about, Eva replied, and Liz froze at how simply the child spoke the truth. By afternoon, the tension in the penthouse had thickened like fog. Mateo's men came and went in silence, eyes scanning windows and shadows. He tried to hide his worry, but Liz could feel it, the way he touched the gun on the table without realizing, the way he stood a little too long at the balcony door. Talk to me, she said. You're waiting for something. I'm waiting for nothing, he lied. And that's what scares me. Liz hesitated, then stepped closer. You can't control everything, Mateo. He met her gaze. In my world, control is the only thing that keeps people alive. Then maybe you need a new world. He almost smiled. You're infuriating. Still here, though, she said softly. Unfortunately, he murmured. But the way he looked at her said the opposite. That evening, a thunderstorm rolled over Manhattan, turning the skyline silver and alive. Eva danced barefoot on the marble floors while Liz taught her to catch raindrops through the open balcony door. Mateo watched them from a distance, his hands in his pockets, his heart somewhere he couldn't reach. Come join us, Liz called. He shook his head. Someone has to guard the kingdom. Even kings need rest, she said. Only when the war's over. Then you should know, she whispered, stepping close enough for him to smell the rain in her hair. The war's not just out there anymore. He didn't ask what she meant. He didn't need to. That night the penthouse fell quiet. Eva slept between two stuffed animals. Zianina murmured prayers in the next room. Liz walked onto the balcony with a blanket and found Mateo already there, looking out at the skyline. Do you ever wish you could disappear? She asked. He didn't look at her. Every day. But the world won't let men like me vanish. We make too much noise when we try. Liz studied him, the shadowed lines of his face, the exhaustion hidden beneath power. You don't scare me, Mateo. You should, he said. I've built my life on fear. Then maybe it's time you build it on something else. Her words lingered in the air like smoke, soft, dangerous, true. Mateo turned to her slowly. And what would that be? Love, she said simply. He stepped closer until the space between them dissolved. His hand brushed her hair back, fingers trembling just slightly. You think love can protect you from what I am? I think love is the only thing that still can. The words hung between them, fragile, electric. For one impossible second, he almost kissed her. Then the world went black. The lights died, not a flicker, but a total kill. The hum of the city outside vanished, replaced by the low growl of thunder and the faraway echo of sirens. Mateo froze. Backup's out. He reached for his gun. Stay with Nina. Get Eva. Liz didn't argue. She ran down the hall, her heart pounding, and scooped Eva into her arms. Shh, baby, it's okay, she whispered. In the living room, Mateo moved silently, his silhouette cutting through the dark like a blade. The city lights outside glowed faint red through the storm. And then softly came a sound. Tap. Once. Twice. 3 times. On the glass. Liz clutched Eva tighter. Mateo. He turned his head slightly. I hear it. Another tap. Slower this time. Deliberate. Someone was on the balcony. Mateo raised his gun, his voice low and calm. Stay back. Lightning flashed, just enough to catch the shape of a man outside, half hidden behind the glass. Then came the whisper through the storm. Tell the king his crown's slipping. The window cracked, a spiderweb bloom of impact, and the storm swallowed the sound. Mateo stepped forward, finger on the trigger. Behind him, Liz held Eva, whispering prayers she didn't remember learning. The city had gone dark. The war had come home. And in that silence, the Mafia boss who'd sworn never to feel again finally understood the cost of loving someone he couldn't afford to lose. Thunder rolled over Manhattan, shaking the glass walls of the Rico penthouse. The city below flickered in and out of light like a heartbeat fading. Mateo Rico moved through the darkness with the precision of a man who had lived his whole life on the edge of ambush. The gun in his hand was steady. His pulse wasn't. "Stay in Ava's room," he ordered. His voice was low, controlled, the kind that made people obey without asking why. But Liz Thompson didn't move. If someone's out there, you can't face them alone. I've faced worse. Not when someone else's life depends on it, she said, clutching Eva against her chest. Mateo's jaw tightened. There it was again. The thing that both terrified and thrilled him. She didn't cower. She stood up to him. And for a man used to obedience, that kind of courage was almost too intimate. He looked at her for one long second before whispering, "Lock the door." "That's an order." Then he was gone. The wind screamed against the windows as he stepped onto the balcony. Lightning flashed, revealing a silhouette crouched near the far railing. The man lifted something, not a gun, but a small metal device with a blinking red light. "Bomb!" Mateo hissed, diving forward. He ripped the detonator from the intruder's hand just as the man lunged. They crashed against the railing, metal groaning under the weight. The intruder was skilled, quick, silent, trained. But Mateo was faster. He twisted the man's wrist until the bone cracked, disarmed him, and slammed him into the concrete. "Who sent you?" Mateo growled. The man spat blood, grinning through broken teeth. "Rafe sends his regards." Before Mateo could strike again, the intruder's earpiece crackled. "Plan B, now." Then the man smiled and rolled backward off the balcony. Mateo rushed to the edge, but it was too late. The man had vanished into the storm below. He turned back inside, his pulse pounding. The device in his hand wasn't a bomb. It was a tracker, which meant the real attack wasn't here. It was somewhere else. And then he heard it, the faint creak of a door. Eva's door. "Liz!" he called out, sprinting down the hall. The room was empty. The windows shattered inward, the curtains flapping wildly in the wind. Glass glittered across the floor like spilled diamonds. Mateo's stomach dropped. "No!" He ran to the balcony, eyes scanning the rooftops below, and there, half a block away, a black van sped into the night, tires slicing through puddles. "Dario!" he barked into his comm. "They've got them! Move now!" Sirens erupted across the city as the Rico network mobilized, cars screeching through red lights, radios crackling with orders. But Mateo didn't wait for backup. He jumped into his own car and hit the gas. Inside the van, Liz fought like hell. Her wrists were tied, her cheek bruised, but her eyes burned with fury. "Let her go!" she screamed, twisting against the seatbelt as Eva sobbed beside her. The man in the front laughed. "Orders were clear. The kid's the bonus. You're the message." Liz lunged, teeth bared, kicking the man in the ribs hard enough to make him curse. "Tell your boss he should have picked an easier target." "Lady, you don't even know who you're dealing with." "I do now," she said coldly, "and he's about to regret it." The driver snorted, right before a black Maserati slammed into the van's side at full speed. The impact was deafening. Metal shrieked. The van spun, tires screeching across wet asphalt, then crashed into a lamppost. Smoke poured from the hood. Before Liz could even process it, the driver's side door ripped open. Mateo appeared through the haze like a nightmare made of thunder and rage. He pulled the first man out by the collar and threw him onto the street. The second tried to raise a weapon, but Mateo's bullet shattered the window before he could blink. "Don't look," Mateo said as he opened the van door. His voice was rough, shaking. "I've got you." Liz's hands trembled as he cut the zip ties. "You came for us. Always." He lifted Ava first, tucking the child against his chest. "It's over," he whispered, though his eyes said it wasn't. He turned to Liz, brushing glass from her hair. "You okay?" "I will be," she said. "But you... don't worry about me." "Too late," she murmured. By the time Dario's team arrived, the streets were chaos. Sirens, flashing lights, reporters already circling like vultures. Mateo handed Ava to Nina's waiting arms and turned to Liz, his shirt soaked from rain and blood. "You shouldn't have been there," he said quietly. "You mean in your life?" "In my world," he corrected. She met his gaze without fear. "You can build all the walls you want, Mateo, but they won't stop me from standing beside you." He stared at her for a long moment. This woman who'd turned his carefully structured universe into something raw and unpredictable. Then he said the one thing he hadn't said in years. "I was afraid. Of losing control." "No," he said softly. "Of losing you." Liz's eyes glistened. She stepped closer, close enough to feel his breath. "Then stop pushing me away." Mateo's hands hovered near her face, hesitant, trembling. "If I touch you, there's no going back." "Good," she whispered, "because I don't want to." His control snapped. He kissed her, deep, desperate, rain mixing with the salt of her tears. For a moment, the world disappeared. No Mafia, no danger, just two broken souls trying to remember what love felt like when it wasn't forbidden. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "You have no idea what you've started." "Then you'd better be ready to finish it," she said. That night, back in the penthouse, the aftermath settled like smoke. Ava slept safely under Nina's watch. Mateo and Liz sat in silence by the fire, the rain still whispering against the glass. "You should go," he said at last, "before this gets worse." Liz turned toward him. "It already did, and I'm still here." He gave a small, pained smile. "You don't understand. If they couldn't break me by killing my wife, they'll try again with you." "Then we fight," she said simply. "Together." Mateo exhaled, eyes tracing her face like he was memorizing it in case the world took her away. "You don't even flinch when I say things like that." "Why?" "Because I stopped being afraid the night you saved us," she said. "And because I finally understand why Eva smiles again. You make her feel safe. And for some insane reason, you make me feel the same." He reached for her hand. "You make me believe in things I buried with Isabella." They sat there, fingers entwined, silence doing all the talking. But outside, in the storm's afterglow, a shadow moved across the building opposite, a camera lens glinting once before disappearing. The next morning, the photo would appear on Rafe Calder's desk, and he'd smile. "If he loves her that much," Rafe said, lighting a cigar, "then I finally know how to destroy him." The next morning, New York looked deceptively calm. Sunlight spilled through the glass walls of Mateo Rico's penthouse, chasing away the rain, but not the tension. Downstairs, the news ran the same headline on every screen: Mafia boss's waitress savior, kidnap, rescue, and forbidden romance. Mateo muted the TV before Ava could see. He stood near the window, sleeves rolled, coffee forgotten on the table. His world, the world he'd spent decades controlling, was now in chaos, and the reason sat at the kitchen counter, quietly braiding Eva's hair. Liz Thompson. Her wrists were still bruised from the night before, her lips slightly cut, but she smiled through it. Calm, strong, stubborn. "She shouldn't be on the news," she said softly. Mateo's jaw flexed. "You shouldn't be anywhere near me." "Too late," she replied. "We're past that." He turned to her, eyes shadowed. "You don't understand what happens next." "Yes, I do," she said. "You think love makes you weak, but maybe it's the only thing that's keeping you human." He didn't respond, but when she reached for his hand, he didn't pull away. That afternoon, Rafe Calder sat in a leather chair across town, watching the same broadcast. He smirked. "Public sympathy," he muttered. "He's turning into a hero. Can't have that." "Orders, boss?" his lieutenant asked. Rafe blew smoke toward the window. "No more violence for now. We'll use words. Fear spreads faster when it looks like truth." He held up a phone. On the screen, a photo of Liz, laughing beside Ava. "Let's ruin her before we kill her," he said. "Make the world believe she wanted this." At the penthouse, Mateo's men intercepted the first attack. Not with guns, but with headlines. Fake stories appeared online within hours. Waitress exposed as undercover informant. Rico boss falls for FBI mole. Liz's phone buzzed non-stop. Threats, lies, poison. Mateo slammed his fist against the wall hard enough to leave a crack. "He's not after me anymore," he said. "He's after your name." Liz's voice shook. "Then use it. Prove him wrong." Mateo looked at her, torn between fury and admiration. "You're asking me to go public? You already are," she said. "The only question is, will you let him write the ending, or will you?" Her words hit him harder than bullets. That night, Mateo gathered his men. Dario, stoic and loyal, spoke first. "Boss, Rafe's bleeding resources. His docks are compromised. He's desperate." "Desperate men are dangerous," Mateo replied. "Then hit him first," Dario said. "End this." Mateo shook his head. "We end it clean. I won't build peace on more graves." Zianina, who had been silent until then, crossed herself. "Your father would have been proud," she said quietly. Mateo almost smiled. "He would have called me a fool." When night fell, Liz found Mateo on the balcony, staring at the skyline. The air smelled of rain and gunpowder. "You're planning something," she said. He didn't deny it. "Tomorrow, I meet Rafe." Liz's breath caught. "You can't negotiate with a man who tried to kidnap a child." "I'm not negotiating," he said. "I'm ending it." She stepped closer. "Then take me with you." Mateo turned sharply. "No. You said you'd end it clean. I'm part of this now, Mateo, whether you like it or not." His voice dropped to a growl. "You think this is bravery, but it's suicide." "Maybe," she said, "but if my being there keeps you from pulling the trigger, it's worth it." He looked at her for a long moment, then whispered, "You don't know what you're asking." "I do," she said softly. "I'm asking you not to die." The next morning, the world moved in slow motion. Mateo wore black. His men followed 2 cars behind. Liz sat beside him, silent but steady, her hand resting over his, not holding, just there. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Neutral ground," he said. "The old pier by the East River." "Sounds romantic," she muttered. He almost smiled. "Depends on how the night ends." When they arrived, the pier was deserted, fog curling over the water like smoke. Rafe was already there, leaning against a car, smiling like a man who thought he'd already won. "Well, well," he said. "The king brings his new queen. Brave or stupid?" Mateo didn't flinch. "You wanted a conversation. You've got one." Rafe gestured around. "You could have brought an army." "I did," Mateo said, eyes cold. "You just can't see it." They spoke for less than 5 minutes. It wasn't negotiation, it was strategy disguised as civility. Rafe wanted the docks. Mateo refused. Rafe laughed. "You've changed, Rico. You used to understand that fear is worth more than love." Mateo's gaze didn't waver. "Maybe I learned the price of both." Rafe stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You really think she's not going to get you killed? Men like us don't get happy endings. We get headlines, tragedies, graves." Mateo's hand twitched toward his gun, but Liz spoke first. "Maybe you just never met someone worth changing for." Rafe looked at her, amused. "Ah." The waitress speaks. "Careful, darling. He'll bury you in the same ground he built his empire on." "Then at least I'll know I loved a man who tried to be better," she said. Rafe's smirk faded. He looked at Mateo. "You've gone soft." "Maybe," Mateo said. "But soft doesn't mean weak." The air went still. Then Rafe's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, just long enough for Mateo to give the signal. From the fog, headlights flared. Police sirens erupted. Detective Mara Cole stepped out, gun raised. Rafe called her. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, kidnapping, and racketeering." Rafe's jaw dropped. "You set me up." Mateo's tone was calm. "No, Rafe, you set yourself up. I just opened the door." The takedown was quick. Rafe's men were disarmed before they could react. As the handcuffs clicked, Rafe glared at Mateo. You think you're clean now? You think the world forgives? Mateo's expression was unreadable. No, but maybe my daughter will. Rafe laughed darkly as he was dragged away. You'll never be free, Rico. You don't get out. You just build prettier cages. When the noise faded and the sirens disappeared into the distance, Liz turned to Mateo. You used the law instead of a gun. He nodded once. You were right. Fear builds empires, but love builds exits. She smiled through tears. So what now? He exhaled slowly. Now we take the third door. What's that? The one between the life I had and the one I want. He reached out and brushed a raindrop from her cheek. The door only opens if you walk through it with me. I already did, she whispered. Mateo kissed her then, slow, deliberate, the kind of kiss that rewrites every scar. When they pulled apart, she said softly, What will you tell Eva? That angels don't always have wings, he said. Sometimes they wear aprons. Back at the penthouse, Zia Nina stood by the window as Mateo and Liz arrived. Eva ran to them, eyes bright. Daddy, did the bad men go away? Mateo knelt, hugging her tightly. They did, Principessa. We're safe now. Eva looked up at Liz. You stayed with us. Always, Liz said. Nina crossed herself. Then maybe the angels finally did their job. Mateo looked at the two of them. His daughter and the woman who'd saved her twice, once with courage and once with love, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. He took Liz's hand. You know, I used to think redemption was a story for other people. And now? She asked. Now I think it's our story, he said. Outside, the city pulsed, alive, dangerous, indifferent. But inside, in the quiet of the penthouse, Mateo Rico finally stopped fighting ghosts. He'd found the third door, and this time he didn't walk through it alone. Morning arrived as if the city had finally remembered how to breathe. Sun leapt off the East River and threw gold across the glass of Mateo Rico's penthouse. Somewhere below, a street violinist tuned a melody that didn't know it was about to soundtrack a promise. Inside, the quiet felt earned. Not a truce, a threshold. Liz Thompson watched the light crawl over the living room floor and thought, some days are built for beginning again. She was barefoot. Her hair was a tumble at her shoulders, clean and soft and slightly rebellious. There was flour in the kitchen from last night because Eva wanted cookies, for courage, and Zia Nina said sugar sticks better to vows than fear does. The oven had clicked warm, cinnamon and orange zest lingering like a benediction. Eva twirled across the rug in a white dress she had chosen herself, a crown of paper flowers, slightly crooked. Daddy, she announced, solemn as a judge, today we do practice wedding. Zia says practice makes forever. Mateo smiled with one half of his mouth, the way men who forgot how to do it relearn in private. He was unshaven, sleeves rolled, the black of his shirt framing the gold at his wrist and the ink at his forearm. He looked like a man who had seen the cost of love and decided to pay it anyway. Practice wedding first, he agreed, eyes finding Liz as if that were the point of the morning. Real wedding next. Real? Liz asked, heartbeat skipping. They had said soon last night. They had said after the dust. But the dust had not asked permission to settle. It simply had. He crossed to her, the city climbing the windows behind him, and took her hand with a certainty that seemed to steady the air. I made a promise in a warehouse once, he said quietly. I've made vows with bullets and silence and fear. I will not make this one that way. I want a priest. I want my aunt. I want my daughter to scatter sugar on cannoli and call it holy. Daddy says sugar is church, Eva reported, delighted. Liz laughed, but her eyes brightened. Church can be a kitchen, she said. I think God invented aprons to stand in for armor. Nina, from the doorway, clicked her tongue. Armor is for the weak. Aprons are for the brave. She set a small velvet box on the counter with a ceremonial thump. He had these made years ago. He thought he wouldn't get to use them. He was wrong. I told him so, of course, but he never listens. Mateo's gaze softened with something like bashfulness. an emotion he wore exactly once, right now. He opened the box. 2 rings glowed against the velvet, one simple and strong, one delicate, a line of diamonds like captured light. Liz felt something in her chest open that she had held closed for a decade. Not because of the stones, because of the way his hand trembled when he lifted the smaller ring, like a man who does not drop what matters. He cleared his throat. "We can wait," he said. And it was true. Patience ran with the same blood as violence in his family. Both took discipline. "We can plan. Invite people." The word sounded fictional. "But today," Liz said, surprising herself with how easy it was. "If Nina will stand in for every person who matters, if Eva will ruin her dress with sugar, if Detective Mara Cole will sign whatever the city needs a person like you to sign to make the papers behave." Nina crossed herself theatrically. "Look at this woman, a strategist and a saint." "Not a saint," Liz said softly. "A person who's done with waiting for life to start." Mateo looked like a man being given oxygen after years of learning to live on half a lung. "Today," he agreed. "This afternoon." He kissed her knuckles, then her wrist, then the inside of her wrist, where the pulse told the truth before words remembered how. Liz closed her eyes. The kiss was not a performance. It was a vow said in a language skin knows first. From the hallway the elevator chimed. Nina bristled. "We are not expecting anyone with bad energy. If it is the bad energy, I will show it my rolling pin." "Save the pin," Mateo murmured, but his posture altered, shoulders set, attention narrowed. He moved toward the door the way oceans shift when the moon pulls, natural and absolute. A keycard slid, the door opened. Mara Cole stepped in. Rain beaded on her leather jacket, though the sky had not rained. Her eyes took the room in one pass. The flower on the counter, the velvet box, Eva's crown. The way Mateo stood between Liz and the door without thinking. A muscle feathered in her cheek. Then she exhaled, and something like a smile tried to exist. "Good morning to the most complicated domestic scene in New York," she said. "Did I interrupt a rehearsal or the main event?" "Both," Nina declared. "Stay. Blessing requires witnesses." Mara tipped 2 fingers in a mock salute, but her professional gravity returned almost immediately. "Short version, because I like not dying. Rafe Calder is in custody and very unhappy. The DA's case is good. The feds want to play, but—" She set a manila folder on the counter, tapping it once. "Men like Rafe don't build only with muscle. They build with accountants." Mateo didn't blink. "Say the name." "Elias Bram," Mara said. "Numbers man, clean on paper, dirty in the spaces between. He's kept Rafe solvent for years. We raided a storage unit this morning. Ledgers, burner phones, a nice little nest egg you might recognize from your missing shipments circa 2017. She glanced at Liz. "I said I owed your man a life. I'm paying interest. I brought the paper trail." "Arrest him," Mateo said. "Working on it," Mara replied. "He's smart, slippery. The kind of rat who chews through walls and waits. He has one thing left he cares about. Rafe's revenge. With muscle out of play, he'll reach for optics." Her gaze swung back to the window. "Which means if you're planning to sign anything today that looks like joy, he'll try to write over it." "Try," Mateo said. The word carried quiet edges. "Try," Mara agreed. "My people will be around the perimeter, discreet, and Rico—" She paused, as if choosing the smallest hammer that could still drive a nail. "There's no such thing as clean anymore, but there is clear. Do what you do best. Make the lines clear." He nodded once. He did not say thank you, but the room heard it. Eva, who had been listening with the solemn patience of the very young when they understand grown-ups are speaking magic, tugged Mara's sleeve. "Do you want a cookie?" she asked. "They make bravery." Mara's face changed at that. "I have never been offered better armor," she said, and accepted one like sacrament. They married in the late afternoon with the city holding its breath. Nina's garden terrace faced west. Ivy climbed brick like green handwriting. Pots of basil and rosemary perfumed the air. A folding table became an altar under a white linen cloth. Nina had found a priest who owed her 3 favors and a ride home. He wore a stole embroidered with vines, and a look that said he had sanctioned worse and blessed less. Eva carried a basket of sugar and powdered it over cannoli shells with grave ceremony. "To make love stick," she recited, "so it doesn't slide off in the rain." "That is theology," Nina said, impressed. Mara stood near the railing, talking into her sleeve in a low code that meant the perimeter was a circle, not a line. Dario lingered in shadow, which was his natural light. Liz's dress was simple, cream silk that floated when she walked, sleeves that grazed her wrists as if reluctant to stop touching her. Her hair fell loose, small pins like stars. She wore no veil. She wanted to see the man she was promising before, during, and after the words. Matteo wore a black suit that did not try to outshine the vows. He had shaved. The lion on his wrist peeked from his cuff as if approving a fellow predator's choice to make a den. The priest cleared his throat, hands gentle. "We are gathered to do the thing life is for," Nina interrupted, then waved for the priest to proceed. He did so with the wise resilience of a man who had learned long ago to let women lead when the weather required sense. "Do you, Matteo Rico, take—" "I do," Matteo said, voice like stone warmed by sun. He did not look away from Liz. He did not look anywhere else because there was nowhere else to look. "I take your hand now, and every time my fear tries to open it." The priest blinked, then smiled. "And do you, Liz Thompson, take—" "I do," Liz said, and her voice was clear in the mild wind. "I take your name without losing mine. I take your daughter without pretending I am a ghost of the mother she lost. I take your life with both hands, and I won't let it turn into the thing you were before love found you." Matteo's throat worked. The city leaned closer. "Rings," Nina prompted, and pressed the gold into their palms. He slid the band onto her finger slowly, like learning how to speak carefully. "I have loved with my body in 100 wrong ways," he said, not proud and not ashamed, only honest. "This is the first time I love with my life. If a bullet is a sentence, I will stand between it and you and make a new grammar." "Language," Nina muttered, dabbing at her eyes. Liz slid the circle of light onto his finger. "I can't promise to make the world safe," she said. "I can promise to make home so brave that the world becomes small." The priest lifted his hands. "What God has woven and the city has dared, let no man cut." He smiled, sudden and boyish. "Kiss the bride, Mr. Rico." Matteo did, with the reverence of a man who understands altars and the appetite of a man who has been starving on purpose. It was not showy. It was devout. When they broke apart, the garden applauded like summer rain. "Cannoli," Eva declared, because joy must be eaten to count. They laughed, and for a moment the terrible, beautiful machine of New York became a village. The shot came at the edge of laughter. Small sound, razor edge, the kind of crack only ears that had learned the alphabet of violence could read instantly. Mara's "down" split the air. Dario moved before the echo faded. Matteo's body cut to angle, pivot, cover. Nina grabbed Eva with a speed that suggested she had been quick all her life, even before children taught her to be quicker. Liz did not freeze. She did not scream. She took one step past fear and placed herself at Matteo's side as if the choreography had been rehearsed. His hand found her shoulder. His weight found the space that made his body a wall. "Inside," he said, low and lethal calm. The second shot spidered glass. A pot of basil exploded green. The priest ducked behind the altar with the practical piety of a man who had blessed men at war and knew the drill. "Rooftop across," Mara snapped, already moving. "Southeast corner, HVAC bay." "Bram," Matteo said, and it was not a question. Mara's eyes cut to him for a fraction. "Yes." Time slowed. If you listened, you could hear the city's pulse under the panic, a bass line old as brick. "Eva," Liz said softly, kneeling, face level with the child. "Want to do something only the bravest princess can do?" Eva's eyes were enormous. She nodded. "Take Zia's hand and crawl under the big table. Count the sugar pieces. Don't stop until I say starlight. Can you?" Another nod. Starlight, Eva whispered, rehearsing. Good girl. Go. Nina hissed in prayer and strategy simultaneously, corralling child and priest and turning furniture into fortress. Mateo's hand tightened. Liz, I know, she said. Inside. But she didn't move yet, not away from him. She pressed both palms to his chest, over his heart, over the weight he carried, and looked up, steady and bright. You do what you must. I will not be the reason you hesitate. Not possible, he answered, which meant you are why I live at all. He brushed his mouth to her forehead, fast, like signing a document he had already memorized. Inside. She ran, low and clean, into the apartment's shadow. Mara and 2 uniforms flowed past her, a river of trained motion. Dario took the stairwell 2 at a time with a suppressed fury that sounded like footsteps. Mateo advanced to the terrace edge. He moved differently than the men Mara commanded. Quieter, older school, a geometry of angles that made him hard to see until it was too late. He counted windows, reflections, air. He listened for the breath a shooter holds, the small inhale a man takes before deciding he can end someone else's story from far away. 3 floors across, a glint, a muzzle-kissing shadow. Mateo stepped into the open on purpose. Rico! Mara barked from the other edge. Don't! The 3rd shot cracked. Mateo was already moving, twist and drop, roll to rail. Not clean. He felt the hot slap graze his shoulder, heat and wet, and the electric sting that says you are still here but not by much. He welcomed the pain. Pain focuses. Pain writes the sentence in the language he speaks when the city forgets who taught it grammar. He sighted, breathed, in, out. He didn't need to kill. He needed to stop. Clear, not clean. Hands where I can see them. Mara's voice boomed from a bullhorn now trained by a woman who understood theater when it kept blood in veins. Sirens began to breed in the distance. The rooftop's metal flashed again. The figure crouched, deciding. A second glint cut the angle from below. Dario, the shadow with a purpose. A thud, a curse. The sound of certainty leaving a man's body. Don't shoot, came Mara's command to the uniforms, sharp enough to herd lions. He falls, he dies. We want the ledger to talk. 2 minutes later, that felt like 20. Elias Bram emerged from behind the HVAC. Hands lifted shakily, face washed pale. Thin mouth twisted with a man's conviction that numbers outrank people. A detective cuffed him. Dario relieved him of the rifle with the quiet disdain reserved for men who outsource courage to distance. Why today? Mara asked, towing a bullet casing toward a bag with her boot. Bram smiled a little because some men think they're clever when they are merely cruel. Because joy photographs better, because grief blurs, because he should have had to choose between the kiss and the bullet. You don't get to write that story, Mara said. Not anymore. They frog-marched him down into a city suddenly interested in what justice might look like with a face. Across the terrace, Nina's head popped above the altar. Is it done? She demanded. Done enough, Mara answered. For today. Mateo exhaled, the breath unwinding from a place he had learned to knot. The grays bled through his suit, a crimson punctuation. He looked at it like a man checking a watch. Then he looked past it to the doorway where Liz stood, braced against the frame, eyes wet, and not from fear. She crossed to him without hesitating and pressed her palm to his wound like prayer. He caught her wrist gently. It's nothing. It is not nothing, she said, voice soft with a controlled fury that was more intimate than panic. It is the last time our joy is interrupted by a man who mistakes accounting for power. That sounds like a vow, he said, mouth trying not to smile. It is, she said. Add it to the list. He kissed her, quick and laughing, then winced because laughing moved the wrong muscle. She made a noise between tenderness and reprimand and steered him toward the kitchen island, because sanctuaries come in marble and cinnamon too. Eva emerged on sturdy knees, sugar dust in her hair, face bright with the thrill of following orders under fire. Starlight? She asked. Starlight, Liz said, and caught the child in an embrace that tasted like salt and relief and sugar. The priest stood, dusting cannoli crumbs from his stole. "In my professional opinion," he declared, "your marriage is valid under God, city, and what we call in canon law, whenever New York tries to interfere." Nina dabbed her eyes and then flicked her wrist like she was shooing away flies. "We finish the cannoli," she ordered. "Bravery requires sugar." They did. You cannot pause forever when the world tries to make you a statue. You must eat and bleed and kiss and sign and laugh. The wound was cleaned. The suit jacket surrendered. Gauze appeared, Nina naturally. Mara took statements in the shorthand of a woman who keeps her reports human. Dario poured espresso with the resignation of a man who has never won an argument with Nina and never will. When the adrenaline thinned, quiet returned, this time with chairs. They sat. The city resumed its song at a lower volume. Mara zipped her notebook. "Bram will talk," she said. "Men like him fear prison more than bullets. Rafe's web will show its strands." She looked at Matteo, then at Liz. "I can't promise a clean end, but I can see a clear one from here." "Thank you," Liz said. Mara shook her head. "Don't thank me. Keep doing this." She gestured, a wide arc that included sugar, rings, a bandage, a child, a priest, a lion under a cuff. "It reminds my side what we're trying to protect when we play at being heroes." After she left, evening began to color the windows. Nina lit candles not because they were needed, but because light should be chosen, not begged. She pulled out a small radio older than Eva and tuned until a slow Italian waltz found the room. "Dance," she commanded, like a queen ordering crops to grow. Matteo stood carefully. Liz stood with him. "You'll stain your bandage," she murmured. "I'll ruin my reputation," he countered. "Too late," she said. "I already did." They moved, not showy, not practiced. The kind of dance where you count heartbeats, not steps. The room blurred at the edges the way rooms do when a life stands up inside them and looks around, surprised to find itself invited. "You scared me," she whispered, cheek against his shoulder. "Today?" he asked. "Always," she said, and when he stiffened, she smiled against him so he could feel it. "You scare me with how much I want the ordinary with you. Grocery lists, lost socks, a calendar with hand-drawn hearts on it." "I have never owned socks long enough to lose them," he confessed. "You're about to," she said. He tightened his arm the slightest fraction, the way men do when they realize they can hold the world without crushing it. "Tell me a future," he asked. "One detail." She thought, then said, "A front room with too many books, a bell over the door, a child laughing in both English and Italian, a coffee machine that wheezes like an old man, a sign that says, 'Rico & Co. Grief is a language. We translate.'" His silence was full of astonishment that a dream could accept him without translation. "You still want the counseling studio," he said. "Yes," she answered. "And you still want something that doesn't require you to carry a gun to feel like a man." He didn't deny it. "I want to look at my daughter and tell her that the family name means protection that doesn't require fear." "You already started," Liz said. "Today was the first piece after the last storm." "It won't be the last storm," he said. "I know," she said. "That's why we stacked sugar." He laughed, then winced, then laughed at wincing, and she kissed the corner of his mouth in apology and claim. From the couch, Eva watched with the unself-conscious joy of a child who believes that when adults hold hands, the weather changes. "Again," she begged when the song ended. "Again, again, again." They obliged, because a child's again is a commandment. The epilogue of the day did not announce itself. It threaded slowly through the weeks that followed, a quiet architecture. The headlines shifted. Rafe Calder's face became a stock photo for men who thought other people were pawns and learned juries disliked chess. Elias Bram testified with the clipped horror of a man who had worshipped numbers and been betrayed by math. Nina tutted at the television and turned the volume down when the anchors used the word monster because she did not like lazy language. Matteo sold the last of the questionable properties with the surgical severity of a man cutting off gangrenous tissue to save a limb he wanted to use to hold his family. He closed 2 clubs quietly. He opened a logistics firm loudly. He established a foundation in Isabella's name with an endowment that made accountants feel holy, counseling for grieving children, scholarships for kids who speak in pictures before they remember how to speak with sound. He asked Liz to design the intake room. She painted one wall the exact color of Eva's paper crown. The sign Liz had dreamed, a small brass plaque, hung near the door. Rico House, Starlight Room. Because that is the word, Eva explained to a reporter who cried on local television and then bought a stack of cannoli from Nina. Detective Mara stopped by the ribbon cutting and refused a photo but accepted a cookie. I arrest bad guys, she told Eva, who nodded solemnly. And I eat sugar when the world behaves. Good, Eva said. Sugar is armor. Dario brought flowers he pretended were for Nina, but placed near the plaque like a soldier laying something at a monument. At night, when the city ran its loud lullaby, Matteo sometimes woke to the old panic, the one that counted exits and windows and loss. He would reach into the dark and find Liz's hand, and the counting would stop. Other nights, he would pad to Eva's doorway and stand like a guard at a bridge that no longer charged a toll. He would listen to her breathe. He would go back to bed, a man learning that sleep is not surrender, it is trust. They married again, later, bigger, church, flowers, a proper procession, and Nina wore a hat that could shade a small village. But they kept the first day as the real one. They kept the flower and the blood and the basil in a jar labeled holy. There were fights. There are always fights when 2 wild animals choose to live in a house. He was too protective. She was too brave. He said no to a television interview. She said yes to a panel about grief. He paced the lobby of the counseling studio like it was a tarmac, and her plane was overdue even when she was upstairs. They learned. That love is not a performance or a pity or a rewrite of what died. It is a room with windows you open on purpose. On a winter afternoon, snow feathering the city down to a hush, Liz found him in the kitchen making coffee badly and trying to call it good. You know there's a machine at the studio that could sue this for slander, she teased, sliding behind him, pressing a kiss under his ear. I am practicing humility, he said, dignified and lying. He turned and trapped her against the counter with the kind of gentle insistence that has nothing to prove. Or maybe I am hoping you will save me. Again. Always, she said. It had become their shortest prayer. He brushed a thumb across her cheek. You saved me before I knew I was drowning. You were teaching yourself to breathe air and water, she replied. I just offered a hand. Marry me, he said, out of habit and joy. We did, she laughed. Then marry me again, he said, because some men learn that repetition is its own devotion. She kissed him like an answer that never changes. From the doorway, Eva rolled her eyes with the dramatic flair of the child of 2 people who kiss too much. Gross, she declared, then beamed because children learn safety by watching what their parents are not afraid of. Go get your coat, Matteo told her. We're late. For what? Liz asked. Ribbon cutting at the second Starlight Room, he said. South Bronx. The waiting list is longer than Nina's patience. Nina, appearing as if summoned by the sound of her name and the promise of a fight, brandished a clipboard. We help all who come, she announced. And we do not sign autographs unless they ask for my biscotti recipe. Which you will not give, Dario said, passing through with a carton of donated toys and the look of a man who had found a second job guarding joy. I will die with my secrets, Nina vowed. Not before 100 birthdays, Liz said, kissing her cheek. They bundled into the corridor and into the elevator and into the afternoon where sirens still sang and headlines still tried, and people still forgot how to say please. But when the doors opened onto the street, someone recognized Matteo and did not flinch. They said, "Thank you." He looked like a man who had not expected that word and had no pockets ready for it. Liz squeezed his hand. He learned where to keep gratitude. In the mouth. Say it back. "Thank you," he told the woman, meaning it. At the new center, A little boy with a too big coat and a drawing of an angel that looked like a waitress handed Eva a paper crown. "For courage," he said. She crowned him instead. "For kings who share," she replied, and the boy stood taller by half an inch that you could measure with a ruler or your heart. Mara showed up late, hair frizzed by snow, paperwork in her bag, a grin threatening treason against her face. "Bram took a deal," she told Matteo sotto voce. "He'll rot in a cell that names what he did. Rafe will be a lesson in case law. She gestured. "You'll do this." "This?" Matteo echoed, looking at Liz, at Eva, at Nina arguing with a contractor about the shame of beige paint. "Yes, this." When the ribbon fell and the flashbulbs tried to steal light and failed, he bent to Liz's ear. "Tell me another future." She considered. "A night with no sirens. A morning where you burn the coffee and we don't care. A summer where Eva's hair smells like pool and sun and sugar. A long table, too many chairs, and every seat filled." He closed his eyes, opened them, let the vision write itself on the back of his lids. "I can build that," he said, "without hurting anything I love." "You already started," she answered. They walked home by a route that used to require counter-surveillance and now required only a scarf. The city did its city thing. Men selling chestnuts, a woman humming into a scarf, a boy parkouring off a bench and apologizing when he almost collided with a stroller. Life making noise. Life refusing to stand still long enough to be scared. On their block, a florist had arranged a window display in white and green and gold. Liz stopped. "Wedding colors," she murmured. "Again?" he asked, the smile in his voice making the question not a joke. "Again," she said, "as often as it takes to remind the world we chose." He linked their fingers. He did not hide the ring or the scar. He had learned that both are parts of the same grammar, what you vow and what you survive. Above them, the apartment lights were warm. Inside, the kitchen would still smell faintly of cinnamon if you listened with your nose. On the counter in a jar labeled holy, a handful of sugar waited for no reason and every reason. You never know when you'll need to stick a day together. Eva dashed ahead. "Starlight!" she called, just to hear the word run up the stairwell. "Starlight!" Liz echoed. "Starlight," Matteo said, tasting it the way men taste words they fought for and won. He unlocked the door. He let them in first. He followed. Some nights end with smoke. Some end with sugar. This one ended with both. And a kiss that reminded a man who had worshipped at the wrong altar that love is not a question you answer. It is a sentence you keep finishing together. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.